Welcome. We're joined by Thomas de Waal, a senior fellow at Carnegie Europe. Thomas, thank you very much for your time.
Glad to be with you.
So to start off, though a ceasefire agreement has been signed, a lot more details are being released every day. Many see this outcome as Russia securing its influence in the South Caucasus. How do you see Russia's play in Karabakh and the wider South Caucasus now?
Well, certainly, yes, this is a Russian diplomatic success. Russia has got its boots back on the ground in the region, something that it's craved since the 90s. Russia basically now controls the Lachin corridor. Since yesterday, there's no Armenian flag there, but also I gather no Azerbaijani flag there really. This is just basically a Russian-controlled corridor, which means that Russia controls access to Karabakh and is also has a sort of key presence in Azerbaijan. But I mean, it's not the same, I think we should say, as in Soviet times. This is a fairly small Russian mission. It has a 5-year expiration clause on it. So Russia is back, but Russia, I think, needs quite a lot of international help to make this deal work. There are a lot of unanswered questions in it. And also, I think it's worth saying that Armenia and Azerbaijan remain sovereign nations. They can still pursue their own policies. So certainly this is a Russian return, but I think maybe the most important thing to say, it's a kind of Western diplomatic defeat as much as it is a Russian diplomatic victory.
And as you may know, it's the centenary anniversary of the Bolshevik takeover of Armenia. Do you see any parallels between then and now?
I certainly do. I've been rereading a little today on the history of what happened 100 years ago. Obviously, there are many differences. The First Republic of Armenia was a devastated, poor place of hungry people, which was then fully taken over by the Bolsheviks. But certainly there are some quite strong parallels. Certainly a feeling that Armenian maximalist positions played a part in Armenia's defeat back then, that people said that the loss of Kars was a completely avoidable error on the Armenian side, and people are saying now about the loss of Shusha, Shushi, the fact that the Western support was only in terms of rhetoric, in terms of things on paper, but the West was never going to intervene. The fact that the Turks felt antagonized by these maximalist Armenian positions, and certainly the Treaty of Sèvres, I think, led to this Turkish offensive in September 1920, which devastated Armenia. And then the fact that the Russians came in as the saviors at the end, and although they were not particularly welcomed at first, they were certainly welcomed on December the 2nd, 1920, as the intervening force, the only intervening force which could save Armenia from total collapse. So I think that there are some interesting parallels there. And again, you see these two strains in Armenian thinking. One, that it's our historic mission to claim as many historic Armenian lands as possible. And the world should understand that this is a civilizational choice. This is the kind of maximalist position. And then the more realist position, which is that Armenia can only prosper if it seeks some kind of accommodation with Azerbaijan and Turkey, its neighbors. And I could just quote to you Simon Petrosyan, who was the last prime minister of the Republic of Armenia. He lasted just a week, in fact. He was the one who signed the documents 100 years ago on December the 2nd, 1920, handing over power to the Bolsheviks. He actually said, he published a proclamation which said Armenia's state structures will be anchored not on the empty and dangerous encouragement of foreigners, but on Armenia's true abilities. And I think that's the realist position, which I think has been, proved to be wiser, I would say, given the catastrophic events for Armenia of the last few weeks.
And many issues do, however, still remain. There's the issue of the POWs, but also there's the issue of the status of Nagorno-Karabakh, which still has not been resolved Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that the conditions are now there for the conflict to be fully resolved. Do you think it's likely that the Armenian-held part of Nagorno-Karabakh could become like Abkhazia or South Ossetia, for example?
Well, first of all, I think Russia's position is going to be much more cautious than in Abkhazia or South Ossetia. Russia basically does not have a kind of strategic interest one way or the other in the outcome of the status of Karabakh. Indeed, Vladimir Putin has explicitly said that Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan. So, I think the issue remains almost unresolvable, in fact, because given during the last few weeks we heard some noises from Baku about offering high status, high autonomy to Karabakh, but in his November the 10th speech, as everyone rightly observed, President Aliyev disavowed that, and he said, "Your status, where is your status? It no longer exists, and you won't get any status as long as I'm president. Your status has gone to hell." So the idea of a kind of territorial status or autonomous status for Karabakh seems to have disappeared, particularly now, of course, as around 1/3 of the former Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous region is under now as a full Azerbaijani control, not under Armenian control. So I would be quite pessimistic that there is a resolution there. And I would also say that the Russians, in a way, have an interest in not resolving this issue. As long as this issue is not resolved, then that's a justification for them to stay on the ground and act as peacekeepers.
Mm. And of course, this is a ceasefire agreement. It's not actually a final peace agreement. How likely do you think a final peace settlement is, and what needs to be done for that to be achieved?
Well, an enormous amount needs to be done, and I think it's some distance off. I mean, obviously, the idea of all these peace plans to resolve this conflict peacefully under various Minsk Group and OSCE peace plans was that there would be a peace plan which would be implemented. There would be some kind of status for Karabakh either now or in the future, and then there would be full normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, opening of borders, diplomatic relations, and so on. But while we have this unresolved status issue, many other issues, and while we have this deep antagonism between the two societies and the two leaderships, that's just not possible. What needs to be done? Well, an enormous amount needs to be done. There needs to be some kind of, much more substantial peace process, give and take, discussion of these outstanding issues for that to happen. I don't see Russia, for various reasons, driving that. I would see some much more stronger international process is needed for that to happen. But I would add one thing. Theoretically, and theoretically is a very important word here, Armenian-Turkish relations now could be normalized. Obviously, antagonism is incredibly high now in Armenia towards Turkey because the role that Turkey played in the war in supporting Azerbaijan and facilitating this Azerbaijani military victory. However, the moment that Armenian forces withdrew from Kelbajar region, that was the formal impediment for which Turkey had made for the withdrawal from Kelbajar region. Was Turkey's reason in when that happened that Turkey would be able to reopen the border back in 1993. That was the Turkish position. So I see really no impediment towards that happening. Of course, given the current Turkish leadership, Armenian-Turkish relations are at a terrible point. But sometime in the future, that is more possible, I think, than normalization of Armenian-Azerbaijani relations.
Mm. And finally, what's next for Armenia and Azerbaijan in terms of domestic politics, in your opinion? Of course, the Armenian MP is facing calls for him to resign. And though Ilham Aliyev's government is more popular than ever, according to many, Azerbaijan too will face major challenges in the future. So what do you think are the main challenges on the domestic politics front for both countries?
Well, it's a very, very volatile situation. We're in a totally different world from where we were just 2 or 3 months ago. Obviously, Ilham Aliyev has scored this major domestic victory. I think if there were free elections tomorrow in Azerbaijan, he would win by 90% of the vote, to be honest. He's consolidated his position. He's already, I think, we're probably going to see some him trying to use that domestically to marginalize or crack down on the opposition. But going forward, he also has problems. The economic problems of Azerbaijan have not gone away, and also society has been mobilized in a way. The Azerbaijani street has been mobilized during this conflict in a way that some of those people will maybe not shut up and will try and be critical of the government. But certainly that's the dynamic in Azerbaijan going forward. Armenia, you're obviously much closer to it than I am. I think, Prime Minister Pashinyan has obviously lost an enormous amount of legitimacy for the way he handled this conflict, and yet he doesn't want to seem to go. And the question then for me is, what kind of political debate is there in Armenia? I think there has to be a kind of critical reflection on the way Armenia has handled this conflict, the way that Armenia has also done its part or not done its part in trying to get a peaceful resolution of this conflict. So I would hope that there will be some debate on that in Armenia, not just a sort of an airing of grievances about who betrayed what and how we lost our lands. But I think that's a very long process, to be honest. And I think from a distance, it looks as though Armenia's just got a very turbulent 2021, and it's not going to emerge from that turbulence anytime soon.
Well, Thomas, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.